Welcome to the Conscious Hustler podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Harden. I know being a leader takes stamina and constant self-reflection. In my double-decade career, I've gone from intern to CEO, launching hundreds of creator campaigns for Fortune 500 brands and building new businesses for creators to grow and scale. Along the way, I have met some of the most interesting people working behind the scenes who have pursued excellence in work and embraced personal growth as mindful leaders. This podcast is dedicated to lifting the veil on successful creative professionals, their mindset, their motivation, and their heart posture. Together in each episode, we will explore the tools you need to not only thrive in your business, but also nurture your soul. My intention is to help you confidently own your work and affirm your experience. If you like what you hear, don't forget to share this podcast episode with a friend, with a neighbor, with a coworker, and subscribe to our channel. Okay, let's get started. Okay, and welcome back. We have Dr. Marcus Collins with us, who is an award-winning marketer and a cultural translator. He has an incredible, notable career. I'm blessed enough to have been a part of a little eensy-weensy bit of it. He was the chief strategy officer at Wieden Kennedy, New York, and is a marketing professor at the Ross School at the University of Michigan. He authored the best-selling book, For the Culture. Listen, if you don't have this book, I don't know what. If you call yourself a marketer, a person that is thinking, you need to get this book. It's called For the Culture, The Power Behind What We Do, What We Buy, What We Do, and Who We Want to Be. Marcus has been inducted into the American Advertising Federation's Advertising Hall of Fame of Achievement and received the Thinkers 50 Radar Distinguished Achievement Award. This boy bad, okay? He also writes for the Forbes CMO Network and contributes to Business Scholarship. Thank you so much, Marcus, for being here.
Oh, I wouldn't be any other place, my friend. Thank you so much for having me.
So a little bit of background on why I know Marcus. So he and I have been in the industry for quite a while, but he and I got close when he went to go work for Translation, which is where I was at the time. And we started the social department. And it's funny because I can imagine sort of like a sliding doors moment or like a split screen where how I got into that department and how you got into that department. And my version of that is, I was Steve Stott's assistant at the time. And he was like, oh, you like social, you should go do that. Like, just because I wanted to get out of his office and being his assistant. And he was just like, here's something you can do. He had no idea that what this was going to be. And then on your side of the fence, it was building a social department, a practice, and an agency that already had such great foundation in, pushing culture forward. And so, Marcus, I want to talk to you and start this conversation off by letting us know where you come from and what brought you into marketing.
Well, I mean, that framing was really kind of a big inflection point for me. My time at Translation quite literally changed my life in that it forced me to see the world in ways I never had before, both implicitly and explicitly.
Mm-hmm.
But let's lead up to that. I'm from Detroit. That's where I'm from. I've always done well in math and science. So I had a sort of trajectory towards engineering, but in my heart of hearts, I was a musician. Yeah. Played piano in church, sang in choir,
Yes,
singing groups, played in bands, the whole thing, right? But of course, anyone graduating in the 90s from high school who did well math and science, and you black, you want to be an engineer. That's what
those are the rules.
I did. Exactly. So I went to engineering, but realized pretty quickly that it wasn't what I wanted to do. I thought it was interesting. I just wasn't interested.
Mm-hmm.
But my parents didn't care. So I finished my engineering degree and went into the music business, writing love songs. So I was a songwriter. And I had a partner who did all the business stuff. This guy named Mike Muse. He did the business. I did the production. We both realized that we weren't business guys. We were both engineers turned these entrepreneurs. And I realized that if I were going to do well in the world of music, I had to understand the business.
Mm-hmm.
And what was disrupting the business at the time was digital.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that a career that focused on the business of music with an understanding of digital would get me to a place in music where I could actually have some massive or major contribution. So I went to business school to study strategic brand management, and that's what got me into marketing. That's like I
Mm,
thought marketing was the most creative aspect of business. And I figure if I can write songs in 4/4, I can write an
surely.
ad. Because in my mind, I thought advertising was marketing and marketing was advertising. That was wrong, but that's what I thought. So my arrival into the world of music was by way of looking for an outlet for creative expression. And thankfully, I ended up working at Apple, doing partner marketing in iTunes, and then going to work at Music World with Matthew Knowles to run digital strategy for his daughter Beyonce Knowles. And in this period of time, I'm in my sweet spot. I'm in music, business, and digital. Great. And realized that the world of music was nowhere close to the way marketers in the commercial aspect, the commercial world of brand advertising, were leveraging these tools. I felt like the valedictorian of the idiots in the category of music because I knew the space well, but nowhere to the capacity that my peers who were working at ad agencies or working for Facebook at the time or Twitter at the time or LinkedIn understood it. And I figured if I'm going to make a significant contribution, then I need to get out of the world of music that I was in and get closer there. So I went into advertising
Wow.
at a pure play social media agency called Big Fuel that no longer exists because it got acquired by Publicis. And it was there that I crossed paths with Stout. I got a
Oh,
note from Stout or Stout's office. Might have been
it
you,
might have been
Freddie.
me. Matter of fact, we
From
need
the
you
office of Steve
to.
Stout. So I get this email saying that, hey, Stout wants to meet you. And I'm like, why? And he said, well, he has translation, which I knew of. Man, of course I knew Stout being in the music industry and knew translation. He said, but they're trying to build a social practice. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But I just started this other agency and like that would be super shady for me to try to jump. So thank you, but no thanks. To stay in touch. Anyway, the long story short of that is Stout invites me over 9 months later to run social, to build social, to your point, build the practice and lateralize that practice across all the clients in the agency. And in doing that, I realized that culture means people and
Needs or meets?
means
Oh,
actually,
meets.
I like that Freudian slip there. It needs people and it means people.
Mm-hmm.
Culture is people. Well, sorry, social is people.
Yeah.
Social, by definition, is people. Social work, social actions, social justice, social welfare. It's all people. And and during my time at translation, when I came to that realization, as we talked about culture, I realized I knew nothing about social,
Mm,
knew nothing about people. So I started to invest myself in the social sciences. I started studying the social sciences, and it completely opened my world. And that inflection point changed my life. That it got me on the road of academia, it got me on the road of scholarship, it got me on the road of thinking about the world beyond the way I see it at face value, but understanding the underlying physics that ultimately drive it forward.
yeah.
And as a result, I do what I do now, study culture and its influence and impact on human behavior.
Wow.
And I do that as a scholar and as a practitioner. And I get to write about it and present about it, teach it, and
Listen.
talk about it.
Okay, I love hearing this because also it's very rare, I think, for people in the business to actually have conversations like this in public forums with their former boss, right? So, like, um, from my perspective, kind of, adding a little more context to what you're saying, we also were in this age of a perfect storm with social media, i.e., why we're building this social, why Translation was building a social agency or practice in the agency. And, you know, you said culture is people, social is people. You're going to learn people. And you're in the advertising space because you're realizing how people behave influences, how we purchase, how we buy, how we identify ourselves. So here comes little Tiffany moving from, you know, an assistant where I was in Steve's ear about like, I need to move, I need to go. Like this is this little box right here ain't for me. And that is something I knew inherently. Like it was just a part of my how I moved around my world and in my life. And if you've ever been on Marx's team or seen any type of presentation ever of his, somewhere there's probably a slide that says people, line, platforms. People over platforms, right?
That's right.
And me and Marcus back in the day, we it was a perfect storm for me because what I knew people, I didn't understand what marketing, like what brands had to do with people. And sitting in
That's right.
translation also changed my life because I was like, oh, I get this side. And now I just have to convince. And I get this side. There are mediums that are helping validate that, but it wasn't mature enough yet. So, this was during an era where we were like trying to convince brands to do influencer marketing programs, calling them distribution partnerships. I remember,
That's
I
right.
remember us sitting in a conference room and you said that word and I said, well, what the hell does that mean? And I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go talk to the people. Okay, I could talk to the people.
I
Like
mean, the timing. I mean, this is talk about timing is everything. We were in the eye of the storm,
truly.
where companies knew that social was important, but they didn't know what social was. They didn't have a good Rosetta Stone to talk about it,
No,
let alone how to
all they
engage in
knew
it.
was that people were doing it. So they wanted to
That's
be
right.
where the people were
That's right.
because social at that time was culture and culture's
That's right.
people. And all these brands wanted to say, well, we want to be where they are because
That's right.
we want them to be our people too because they buy our
That's right.
stuff. So how do we get over there? And it's like, okay, well, here are these roads, here are these bridges that people are willing to use to bring you along for the ride. And that ended up being the influencer marketing industry that blew up. And that's funny enough, me and my friends, we joke about this, but like this was this was like ground zero because if you if you even add on top of this where people of color were in this space, like bruh, I was like ground zero, one of the first talent managers to like really author like how people should be making money in this space.
And to me, I think that is what I'm most proud of the work we did there. Beyond like the case studies, I mean, we crushed on the actual work, but the work I'm most proud of is that we took a space that was abstract and nebulous.
Hmm.
It was sort of like it was viscous,
Hmm.
right? It sort of had not taken shape yet, and we gave it structure, we gave it language, we gave it rigor,
Hmm.
and we talked about it in a rigorous way, such that we were able to build and scaffold on top of it. I mean, I think about the work we did is we laid bricks on the edifice that we now call influencer marketing. Like we were laying the foundation to how brands engage in this space. I mean, we launched an entire campaign, an influencer campaign based on someone who doesn't really exist, known as Cliff Paul for State Farm.
Hmm.
I mean, want to date us for a moment here. We did the very first brand partnership for Kendrick Lamar.
Dude, do you I talk about this
Right?
all the time because I'm like, he would never do that today. I had brought him
Never,
into the office. I had brought, who else did I
never.
bring in? Liana LaHavis, Janae Aiko,
Yep.
Stally at the time, J. Cole. Like I had brought,
Arab music.
yeah, Arab music. I remember,
Yep.
what do we call them? Cultural immersion sessions or something like that.
That's right. That's
And
right.
I would bring them in. And part of it for me was like being a good steward for my people, because I came from the music business, my people that were on the other side that also didn't really know how to interface with agencies and brands and brand
Yep.
leaders. But it was also because there were people who were just so stuck in their cubicle of like, what is the CTR and the CPM and the, it's like, are you out in the world seeing what's going on? Can you like,
And this is where I think academia served me well, because academia, they spend we spend so much time sort of fighting over language. Like the language is so important. The words, the constructs. I mean, we call language constructs because we construct on top of them. We call them constructs because they have to be operationalizable. And in the world of marketing, we just be saying words. We just be saying stuff. And they don't even have much meaning or much depth to them. Someone talk about authenticity, you go define it. And then you got a whole bunch of Homer Simpson blank stares. And I think that what we did well was that we brought language to things and we helped create a vernacular that allowed us to not only introduce more people to it, but build on top of it. So like, I think if you think about yourself, that you had so much of sort of the innate understanding of things. You just needed the language to point it in the right direction. Where or other people on the team, they had like some of the language, but a lot of the skill set, but none of the feels.
Yeah.
And I think that what we built well was a team of rigor and vibes.
Rigor
That
and
we had like
vibes. I
sort of like these like marketing rigor
mhm.
with like cultural vibes.
Yeah. This
And I
is
think that
really
place like
important.
translation and even Widen later on for me fostered environments where those things can be facilitated well.
Yeah. This is actually really important. I want to sit on this for a second because um one of the things that I get really excited about is, and especially for our people, is and anyone in general, is non-traditional professional talent, right?
Mm,
Um, I went to school for music business. I, studied under these moguls. So a lot of my learning was through practice and osmosis, right?
yeah.
And sitting down and being able to construct ideas, put them on paper was something that I learned at translation specifically from you. And we call that strategy. But like, I want to speak to some of those people who are like vibes people, right? Who
Mm,
are culture people and are
yeah.
trying to figure out how do I how do I translate my skill set, even if it's a soft skill set, into value,
Hmm.
especially in a world where it's know your worth, and especially in a world where there are tons of connectors now that's not special. How do you create, when you think about it from an individual perspective, how do you create and translate, you know, cool guy vibes
Yeah.
to executive?
That's why it was so important for me to write this book for the culture, for that very reason.
Hmm.
That we all know intuitively how influential culture is on human behavior. We all know it. But because we don't have the best language to describe it, it renders us almost incapable of quantifying or appraising the value of those who understand how to navigate through culture, right? But when we have language for what culture is, a system of conventions and expectations that demarcate who we are and govern what people like us do, this invisible hand that guides almost every decision that we make as social animals in this world. When you see culture that way, you go, oh, yeah, culture is super important. And you understand this really well. Please come help us understand it. Come help us navigate it. Come help us find the best partners for it. When we had the language to frame the problem, you now position yourself as a solution to the problems that exist. But when the problem isn't framed correctly or the problem is framed ambiguously, then your solution is just as ambiguous as the problem. How do I know that you're the person? How do I know that you're the woman or the guy? How do I know that I even need anything that you provide? Providing the right frame for the question creates the invitation for you to be the perfect solution. The language matters.
That spoke to my spirit. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm going to put this out for anybody else. That was for me.
Mm,
And you know what? In a world where we have talent managers, agencies, tech solutions for brands that want to do influencer marketing. There's we were out in Cannes early or a few months ago, and there's so much out there for a brand, and they may think,
yeah.
oh, we need that tech solution, and that freelancer, and that like there's so much out there. If you could sort of describe, if you could sort of pick kind of like a stack um, of resources, not even just a tech stack, but just like a stack of resources for a brand that is a challenger in a space, and say, if you don't have nothing else, you must have this, whatever those resources are, to make sure that you are in culture properly.
Oh, so I would say three things.
Mm-hmm.
The first is you got to have perspective. Like, how do you see the world? Like, what's your point of view in the world? If you don't have a point of view, you cannot participate in culture. Just full stop. It's like any other conversation, right? If we're talking about the basketball game and you didn't watch the game, you can't jump in the conversation. And if you don't have a point of view on the game other than they scored a lot of points, you're not contributing to the conversation. So your participation in the conversation is stunted. No tool, no platform, no data stat can substitute the lack of perspective. So the first is, how does your brand see the world? How does your politician see the world? How do you as an artist see the world? What is your view on the world? That's the first. The second is to go, okay, who sees the world the way I do? Who people who believe. This is the collective of the willing. These are people that are more inclined to move, not because of who you are, but because of who they are. That when you say your thing, when you communicate your perspective, they go, hell yes, finally, someone said it. I've been feeling like that for so long. I just didn't have the language for it. And when they hear it, they go, Tiff, this guy is saying exactly what we're talking about, which that person now becomes the evangelist on your behalf, not because of who you are, but because of who they are. Now, how do we know who those people are? Well, we know what they believe. Now we got to go find them.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding the spaces where they exist becomes part and parcel to doing that very thing, right? They may be in physical spaces, they may be in online spaces, they may be in somewhere in between. So you need a guide, you need a plus one to sort of bring you into the spaces and be like, yo, we get in for free, 8A with me, as a Malice from the clip says. It's having the proximity. So we know who we are, we know who we're after.
Mm-hmm.
People see the world similarly. We preach the gospel to them to activate the network effect among them, but then we have to have access to them. And that often requires someone holding our hand, being a plus one, or inserting ourselves in spaces, being brave enough to do that. And those spaces exist in both zeros and ones and the physical world. The tools to get there, they're plentiful. They come in and out, right? Like my tool, my go-to has always been Reddit, because it's a community of communities. So that's kind of where I see things happening. It's where I kind of go deep. My doctoral research was in looking at Reddit communities. So I have an affinity for there, but TikTok is another place where you can observe those things happening, but none of that matters. None of it matters if you don't have a point of view on the world. None of it means nothing. You can have a data stack from here to Timbuktu, as my mother would say. But if you don't know how you see the world and they're able to translate the world, it's all for naught.
Was there a third, or was two? Was having
Third was
perspective?
about access to it, getting access
Okay.
to it.
So run them back for me. We had get some
Who
perspective.
you are, how you see the world,
Mm-hmm.
who are the collective of the willing, the people who see the world the way you do,
Mm.
right? And by the way, it's not a demographic. It's not millennials. It's not Gen Z. It's not black folk. It's not no. It's people who have an ideological congruence to how you see the world. Who are those people? That's your job to find out their identity.
Mm-hmm.
Who are they? And then the third is getting access to them. Sometimes that's media real estate that you have to populate with some messaging. Sometimes that's in a physical space where they are, right? This is where, just Tiffany shines, because she curates these environments to bring people together. And if you're in an environment, you go, oh, you must be cool because you're here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have access to those things? Sometimes it requires a plus one. Sometimes you got to go build your own and invite people into it, right? So it's access. Who you are, who they are, how do we access them?
Yeah, I love that. The build your own is really cool because when at the moment you said that, I thought about Issa Rae. She went and built her own.
That's right.
Like, who are the other awkward black girls? And then how can we build on top of this? I absolutely love that. And what you said about perspective, just so folks know, um, you have been preaching this since the dawn of time, like the dawn of time. I remember specifically sitting in your office at Translation on the, what was it, the fourth floor. And I don't know, I was always going through something and I was talking to you about it. And you were like, you know what, Tiffany, you need to make sure you have a point of view. Have a point of view and then go from there. And so mind you, we hadn't worked together since 2000, what was that?
13, 14, 13 or
I
14.
left in 13, so that was probably like 12.
But we like worked
Yeah, we
together.
worked together, but like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
at that time, so that was around like 13 or 2012.
It
So
was 11 years ago. Yeah.
11 years ago. So when I tell you this brother has been preaching the gospel,
It's wild. It's wild. Like it's so funny. And I'm so grateful. God, I'm so grateful that the book is done as well as it has and it had the impact that it has. And I'm just so grateful for it. But I have been preaching these things for well over a decade. The things that are in the book are things that I have been saying for well over a decade. And that's the thing, is that like the timing isn't yours, it's God's time. You just got to do the work.
you got
You
to do
do the
the
work.
work. You got to do the work.
Yeah.
So let's talk about practice.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about practice. You've been, you know, you found your point of view. You've been, preaching the gospel. You've been a leader. You've been a manager. You've been an individual contributor. Like, how did you, as Marcus, you've been a professor, you still are, like, how did you quit the ladder, so to speak,
Hmm.
and do something different that for a lot of people may have been not the popular choice. So
Oh yeah.
like there are a lot of, what are some of those unpopular choices you've made in your career
Yeah.
that you're like, if not for the blood, but like that you're like, thank God I made those decisions,
Yeah.
even though they were unpopular because it's supporting what I'm doing right now.
So I would love to say that it was just me and my, formidability and forward thinking that I just made this decision and da, da, da. In some cases, I was sort of forced into it. In that you hear advice, you hear these things in your life, whether it's from your parents, your mentors, etc. And there comes a time where they all kind of crystallize, and you go, "Oh, oh." And for me, it probably was when my wife was pregnant with our first daughter, Georgia, and uh, we found out that she had a high risk pregnancy. So she was like, "I can't work." And I was like, "Oh, so it's all on me now? Like I gotta pay for it. Like me now? I am the sole uh, revenue source for our family." That was a ton of pressure, and I found it quite anxiety producing. And I was like, we worked in an agency with a lot of dynamism, and the industry itself is full of dynamism, right? It's just stability, security isn't always sort of the top of the heap that makes advertising a very interesting place to work.
Yeah.
And I go, man, like if I lost my job tomorrow, my family goes to $0.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I can live like that. I couldn't sleep. I did not have, it was too much anxiety for me. At the time, I was already sort of engaging myself in the social sciences. I was doing some guest lecturing here and there. And I had literally, like a week before we found out about the high risk pregnancy, I got a gig teaching a weekend course at Miami Ad School. And like it paid like maybe $800. It was not like
Yeah.
anything big.
Right.
But in my mind, I was like, if I lost my job tomorrow, at least we don't have zero.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I did that, that went really well. And that led me to Hyper Island. And then I started teaching at NYU. And of course, more money. And I'm like, oh, not only is this good for me kind of financially, but also I became a better practitioner the more I taught. And I was like, I'm actually better because this thing that I do over here. And I was a better teacher because I was a better practitioner. And it was this sort of this cycle that reverberated and fed each other. That was a better practitioner because of the scholarship, and a better scholar or teacher because of the practice. And I was like, that's where I sit right there. That's it. Right, that's the cheat code right there. And anything that got in the way of that,
Mm.
that was going to happen. And for me, it became so crystal clear, so unbelievably clear. And when I would say it to people, people were like, "You bugging?" I go, "Oh, then I'm on the right track,"
Yeah.
because it's something that Stout used to say. Again, crystallized for me, all this happening. Stout would say, if you have a good idea and it's logical and no one gets it, you're onto the right thing. And that's what it was for me. So people were like, wait a minute, you're going to leave New York to go to Michigan to work in advertising? What's wrong with you? And I'm like, oh, y'all just don't know. You just don't know. Because I'm going to work this job at Donor,
Hmm.
where I went, and I'm going to get a gig in Michigan.
Yep.
And I'm going to engage myself in that. And I'm going to live in these two worlds. Academic practitioner, that's what I'm going to do. And that we moved in 2015, 2015,
Yeah.
right? And that's really where my career took off. So I say all that to say that, like, the practice of it all is that I was put in a situation where I had to make a choice. And the choice I made, again, not to, quote Stout here, but like, I decided to bet on myself.
Yeah.
And I realized that betting on myself meant taking greater risks.
Mm.
And greater risks, in my mind, brought greater reward. And I was willing to make that risk. In fact, I thought it was riskier not to bet on myself.
That's huge. And I'm glad you did make that, you took that risk. Not only for yourself and for your family, but obviously like the reward is that much bigger. And from what I've seen, you're such a beloved professor at the Ross School. Like, and it's wild because when you think about your younger years and being a manager, we were kind of your first your first crew. There is a solid crew, and we know who we are.
Yeah.
Who?
Those first 18 months, like that, y'all, I mean, I will forever be indebted and grateful for you all because you trusted me.
Oh,
We brought together a group of people who we'd never done this. None of us had ever done this before because it hadn't been done. And you all trusted me. And
yeah.
we, like, that first 18 months of translation, first 18 months, we launched Made in America Music Festival. We moved the Brooklyn Nets. We launched Cliff Paul for
Bud Light
State Farm.
Platinum, Lime-A-Rita,
But like platinum, all the
Lime-A-Rita.
the first 18 months, we did all that work. It's
It's
unbelievable. So
insane.
that crew, people will forever have my heart.
So insane. And I really appreciate you talking about betting on yourself because I tell this story all the time, and I mention you all the time because, you know, when it was time for me to go, I remember having our review, and you asked me this question, and the review was fine, but like I knew where my heart was, and you probably did too. I was rolling in at like 10:30. I was like, so like, nah, I don't want to be here. And I remember you like kind of shuffled your papers, and then like you put them down, and you were like, why aren't you doing what you want to do?
That's exactly right.
And I looked at you like, hush. Shut up right now. But the question reverberated in my spirit because it begged another question, which was, who are you being loyal to?
Right.
And if there was any other answer but Tiffany Marie Harden, it was the wrong answer. And
Yeah.
then in there, it was like, oh, I gotta go. Like
Yeah.
it was.
Because honestly, you were cheating yourself. That's the thing. You were robbing yourself.
Mhm.
You were coming to a place sort of like, and like half-heartedly doing the work that you wanted to do. Like
Right.
because you were not exercising the part of you. So I was like, what are you doing?
Like it's like, okay, we gonna do this review real quick, but also like, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
And
What are
it's
you
it's
doing?
so funny because even then I went on and did my thing, and like around 2014 I was solopreneuring for different companies, and I remember calling you and being like, I need more clients. And you were like, oh, you need to come over here to donor. And I was like, what is a donor? I was like, I didn't know anything about it. And that was really my first time being in Detroit. And like, I only had to, went there like once a month, but I got to meet some incredible people. And, I'm actually going out to Detroit, later in September, and
I
for
love it.
the Black Footwear Forum, with
Nice.
Dion Walcott and Pencil and all that. But like Detroit also, come to find out, has a special place in my heart, because turns out, and I didn't know this, that I have family ties in Detroit. Yeah,
Look at this
my
Mississippi girl.
you know what I'm saying? Like, this is on my mama's side, though. That's on my mama's side. Mississippi on my daddy's side. South Carolina and Detroit is on my mom's side. But like, it's interesting how place and environment contributes so much to your growth and your evolution. And when I was living in New York City in 2019, and I got that download to move to Nashville, Tennessee, which was not on my bingo card,
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
was obedient. And so there are things where when you get that download to say, like, this doesn't make sense to me, but it makes sense to God. And so I'm just going to roll. I'm going to roll
That's
with
right.
it. And from that movement, I got really clear about what I wanted to build in Guild
Yeah.
Creative Group. And, I've had Fortune 500 clients, and, just signed some really great clients just now, working with brands on their influencer marketing campaigns and creating for them and with them that perspective, so that they can not just, I call it warehouse influencer marketing, where they just click click names on a
Yeah.
spreadsheet. It's like, no, let's really, like, to your point, have the vibes, the rigor, have the marketing rigor meet the consumer and the community relationship that you're trying to build. And so, it's a beautiful thing to kind of see, like, your roots in where you started in marketing entertainment, and seeing that grow into a business, into you know a media business for you as well, because you're doing speaking, you're doing media. Like, it's a really beautiful thing to see. So we're gonna round it out here, and
Mhm.
I would love for you to share with us, especially in particular. I'm thinking about young marketers. I'm thinking about people who, unlike us, grew up with social as a part of their day-to-day life. Like,
Mhm.
this is their native. We adopted their native. you know, I would love for you to talk about those folks who have the opportunity to presumably skip steps
Mm.
because it feels easier to do that.
Yeah.
What would you say to them to be well-rounded, full stack marketers in a world where they didn't have to actually, you know, be up under somebody to learn? They could have
Yeah.
took a few courses, got a certificate, and kept it pushing.
You got to stay in the gym. You got to be in the gym. You know, I'm grateful. Going through it sucked. You know, like I felt like there are some people who got to take the elevator up, and I took the stairs every single time. And I was like, why? Why do they get the looks? Why do they get to go on the private jet? Why do they get to whatever? Like, I don't. I'm no one's giving me that look, and I was pissed about it as a young professional. But I took the stairs, right? Because I took the stairs, my legs are strong, my core is strong, right? So when I talk about a thing, when I do a thing, I do it with tremendous conviction, not confidence, conviction, because it's rooted in something stronger. And I think that, in a world where what Guy Debord would call the society of the spectacle, where the representation, the symbolizing of a thing is more important than the thing itself because of our media diet, that there's a lot of projecting of what is not substantive. And I would say to young, any person who is in the early stages of their career, that, man, you want substance over representation. Substance. Be dope. like maniacal dedication to dopeness, so that when you're like, yep, I'm dope, then you focus on being forward facing. Then don't skip the steps. Stay in the gym.
Stay in the
Keep
gym.
shots. Stay in the gym. Stay in the gym. And once you are dope, then you can be forward facing. And here's the beauty of all this. Then once you are dope and you are public facing, you will have a sense of humility, because you would understand how many people poured into you, contributed to you, helped you along the way to climb those stairs, that you know it wasn't just you. At the very least, you know God had your back. But beyond that, there's so many people who contribute to you along the way that you never say, like, I've been self-made and I do whatever. You go, no, I took the steps up, but thanks be to God. By grace and mercy, I had him. Thanks be to God that he put people in my life that even if they reported to me, they were more like partners than they were employees.
100%.
Those are the blessings, but you don't get that when you skip the steps.
That's real. And I know a lot of people are going to appreciate that. And I know I appreciate that. And, what's funny is I was thinking of the steps metaphor and thinking, there are people, they're also on the steps, right? You're not on some people, they're like, oh, this is my third case. I'm like, don't worry. It gets better. It gets easier, and there are people along the way who, whether by choice or by force, that they're also on the steps. And I used to say, God wanted me to see the scenic route, so that when my testimony really comes full circle, that I can actually say, like, oh, no, I know how that felt at that time. I remember when that felt at that time. I remember going through that thing. And you feel all the things, because what I believe part of my purpose is, I'm a relator. I'm a relationship business. And so it's truly a part of how I've grown as a practitioner of this work, but also, being and having a heart for people coming up and raising what I like to call mindful generations of leaders, because I've been there.
Yeah.
And it can be scary when you have so much ambition and so much drive, and you're like, where is this going?
Yep.
When am I going to get where I want to go? And you're going to get there when you get there.
As the scripture says, the race isn't given to the swift or the strong, it's the one who endures to the end. So endure.
Endure. That is good. So let me ask you one last question. When you hear the words conscious hustler, what does it mean to you? What do those words connected mean to you?
So conscious hustler in my mind means intentional action.
Intentional action. That's a word.
That my dealings are purposeful, and my dealings are in service of something greater than the action in and of itself.
That's
intentional
true.
action.
I love that. That is so beautiful. Intentional action. That's exactly how I felt when I thought of that, when it started, because there's this commitment to excellence and the pursuit of that ain't gonna stop. But that consciousness on top of it, that intentionality, like, it has to be there. Otherwise, you're just burning yourself out, dragging yourself to the ground, and nobody needs that. Nobody needs that.
Amen.
Okay, Marcus, where can we find you? What's next in your world? Give us a little 1-2 punch on the way out.
You can find me across all the socials at Mark to the C, MarcTothec, as well as marktothec.com. Paperback version of For the Culture drops September 10th. Lots of fun things happening around it. Also, Lions Learning course, Unlocking the Influence of Culture, a Marketer's Greatest Cheat Code. All the things. All the things.
Matter of fact, just Google the brother and you're going to find out. If you didn't know, now you know.
Hey.
The king of dope himself, Marcus Collins. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Love you, my friend. Thank you much.
Love you too. Okay, that's it. Thank you for listening to the Conscious Hustler podcast. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe to this channel, and feel free to reach out. I would love to hear from you. You can do so on LinkedIn or on Instagram. Just send me a DM. But until next time, keep listening, keep reaching out. We are in this together, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.